Hello everybody, this is Argotti, and what year is it? Another video? What's going on? So, and link will be in the description, and if I can figure it out, the buy thing up at the top, whatever. A friend of mine, TheHeartfulDodger, I'll be honest, I kind of know him more through some of my other friends like Famajack and Rakaku the Psychro. But I've still hung out with him a few times. Went to PAX South with him this year, before, the whole world went fucking crazy on us, and we had to go inside for, 12 years at this point? Anyway, he posted a video recently about Final Fantasy 15 and Final Fantasy 7 Remake, and how it's killing Square Enix. I'm going to be upfront about a couple things here. I am known for liking what are regarded as terrible games. If you look on my channel, you'll see me, defending Fallout 76 on launch. And I will continue to defend it. I had fun with that game at launch. I haven't gone back to play it recently. I want to go through the Wastelander stuff at some time, but my backlog has gotten really huge. So, I got that. I might have posted a thing about Mass Effect Andromeda. I don't know if I ever did or not, but that was another game I loved that people hated. And, even outside of that, anime, I love terrible anime. I liked Darling in the Franxx after the twist that everyone says ruined the show. But I live for that shit. Anyway, completely gone there. So, let's start with Final Fantasy 15. Just want to make a couple corrections first. There were only 4 story DLCs, 5 big DLCs total released. There was episode Gladius, Prompto, and Ignis. Then there was the Royale DLC, or the Royal DLC, whatever that. That and all the previous episodes were bundled into one for the Windows release, which is what I got. So maybe that doesn't hurt me as much more. And then they only released Arden after that. There were plans for Arachnia, Lunafreya, and Noctis, but those were shelved. Unfortunately, in my opinion, because I was really interested to see the direction that those were going to take. I wanted to see where the story would go with that. And I think that they kind of took that and went into Final Fantasy VII Remake with that in mind. Now, I get, game took forever to come out. Why didn't it have the whole story in there? And, people always are complaining about, well, why isn't the full story included in the game? Or, oh, they obviously cut this part out so they could put in DLC later. You know what they used to do back in the day with stuff like that? They would cut that stuff out and then never release it. There's this little game, I don't know if many of you have heard of it. It's by this indie studio called Obsidian. It was called Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. And it was obvious that they completely removed about 40% of that game's story. And you can access it these days, kind of, with a mod that restores that content. And I think there's a couple others. It's been a while since I looked into it. But the base game, you could obviously tell, the final planet, there are hours of gameplay missing, hours of story. It's just bonkers. And if current DLC practices had been in place back, 2004, 2005? I would have bought that in a heartbeat. I wanted to see that story of Knights of the Old Republic 2. So, that's where I come from when I'm like, yes, they cut this out, but they're giving it to us back. They cut it out because of time and budget constraints. They couldn't get it working right in time for release. They had to go gold, so they cut that out, got it to a playable and finishable state, and they added it later. Mass Effect 3. There was, the free DLC that updated the ending to make more sense, as well as some other DLC that provided more context to it. That's fine with me, and that's what a lot of the episodes were. Is they provided, extra stuff in the game that, was cut out because either time and budget concerns or because they weren't sure if people want to do that. Like episode Prompto, I don't know how many people wanted to go through a third-person shooter section in what's been a pretty good action JRPG game up to that point. I'll be honest, I haven't played Ignis or Arden yet. I am planning on getting to those at some point. I have like 75 hours and 15, but again, another stuff. 7 Remake. Alright. So, Heartful Dodger's big complaints on this stem to kind of two things. One of them a lot bigger than the other, and that is that he was told it was going to be a remake of Final Fantasy VII. I don't know where he's expecting it to be a beat-for-beat retelling of everything with no changes whatsoever, and I honestly wonder if he actually wanted that. Maybe he doesn't, that's just the sense I'm getting, but why are you wanting to get that when you could, as you point out in your video, play Final Fantasy VII with a mod that upscales the graphics, does other changes to it to more modernize the game. Mods exist for that. Mods exist for KOTOR 2 to bring stuff back that was missing in it. Mods exist in other games. Mods exist for Final Fantasy VII for this. But if I am paying, $60 for what was advertised to me as only the beginning of the game, the first 3 hours, maybe 6 if you're kind of bad at JRPGs like I was back in the day, of the most boring section of a good Final Fantasy, not the best one, not the best on its on the system it released on the PlayStation 1, and in my opinion, not even the best JRPG that released within 12 months of it. Breath of Fire 3 will win that for me, but that's just me. But so they took the worst section of Final Fantasy VII, the most railroady section, which that was another thing. He was like, super linear, yeah. That whole section was the super linear, you have to stay on these paths, you stay on these trail tracks, and keep going. That was what that section of Final Fantasy VII was. Have you played it recently? Other than the remake. So they took that, and they made it I think I completed in 35, 36 hours my first playthrough experience that I, personally, loved pretty much every second except for one boss fight against Rufus, and that was only because my playstyle, I did not know that blocking attacks gave you whatever the ATB gauge was. If I'd known that, I would have enjoyed that boss fight a lot more. Damn Jack will tell you, I was raging hard during that section until I beat him. It's like, oh, I'm a moron. Anyway, aside from that, it's a good game. It's got a lot of side content, and it's a remake. It is remaking the world of it, and like I said, I think they took some of the stuff from 15, the last two DLCs, which were about the woman, Luna Freya, finding a way to change history, and then Noctis beating the gods and coming out with the ultimate happy ending for the game. And I'm gonna go straight into super heavy 7 Remake spoilers here. That's what the fuck Aerith is doing with Cloud. And I think Sephiroth also has been on that. I'm excited for where this is going. I can't wait for episode 2 or whatever to drop this. I'm gonna drop full money on it. I don't give a shit. That is a day one purchase for me because the promise is so good and my mind is just exploding with the possibilities. And like I said before, I live for that shit. One of my favorite animes of the past 5 years is Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. Not for the reasons you think, but because that constantly twisted, went in weird story directions, and I was just like, whoa. I love that in my anime and other things too. Like, the ending of Big O, Paranoia Agent, Evangelion, all these things, and they suddenly take a hard, weird twist. I live for that. I love that. And Final Fantasy VII Remake delivers on that so hard. It's just, I can't wait to play more of the story of it. I need to go back through and play on hard mode. I've completed 1 chapter of it so far. I don't like I will say I don't like what they do for hard mode, which is increase damage, but you can't use items. I think that's kind of a lazy hard mode. Hopefully it's better. And probably I should go into Kingdom Hearts at this point, because that's been doing a lot of that stuff recently, but honestly, I was really disappointed with Kingdom Hearts 3. It was fun, but it did not live up to the hype of, it being, 15, 20 years to get to that point. I didn't play a lot of the in-between games, so, I both missed out on that. So probably hyped it up more, and also less, if some of my friends like the Cool Imp are what you go off of. I haven't done Remind or any of that stuff. But also, just speaking of Final Fantasy, TheHeartfulDodger missed out on the actual big game that Square Enix has been doing for the past, 7, 8 years? Final Fantasy XIV. And oh man, it is getting so good right now. Shadowbringers is not only the best MMO experience I have had since Aphron's Fall, it is one of the best RPG, one of the best game experiences I've had in a long time. The story is just so amazing. There's just so much great stuff. The gameplay is fun as always. It's just, he ignored it. I get it's not for everyone, but, you should try it out. Shameless plug here, starting August 11th, they are increasing the free trial for Final Fantasy XIV, so you go up to level 60 on all classes you are able to unlock, which is all of them in the base game, including Gatherers and Crafters, as well as the 3 from the first expansion, Heaven's Ward, which you also can play through the entire story all the way up to basically what would be the beginning of Stormblood, the second expansion. You get all that content for free starting the 11th. So, check that out. Probably have a link down below for that. But anyway, Final Fantasy XIV is so good. It's doing so great stuff. Admittedly, it is basically a theme park of Final Fantasy with its own story, but it's got a lot of things that are callbacks to previous. In the base game, there is a raid that is basically Final Fantasy III. It's an area from there, including the final boss of Final Fantasy III as an enemy. There is a whole raid series in Stormblood that fights different bosses from 4, 6, and then a battle against Chaos from 1. They reimagined it, yes, but it is still, you can clearly tell, oh shit, this is that. You can fight the Warring Triad from Final Fantasy VI in separate boss fights. In Final Fantasy 14. It just does stuff like that. There is a series of battles against, what's his name? Gilgamesh. Like, if you're a Final Fantasy player, if you like Final Fantasy, you should be playing 14. I'm just saying. And they're adding new stuff all the time to it. It is looking like the current raid series, it already has some inspiration. It looks like it's going to go heavy into that pretty soon. Like, the first fight in the new one, well, like, the whole thing is called Eden. So, obviously, you're fighting against the most powerful summon from 8, Eden, and that's the first fight of that raid for the whole current expansion pack. And they keep with the story in it, they just do different things. There is fight, like in Heaven's Ward, the one that you get free, you have Alexander. And there's also a fight against Ark from Final Fantasy IX. And I think there's a couple others in there too. In A Realm Reborn, you have the the binding coils of Bahamut. And if that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what does. So yeah, looking at 14, Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm excited as hell for it. It is linear for a reason, and it is most likely going to open up a hell of a lot in the next game, and in ways that are unexpected I can't wait for. And 15, yeah, you got some stuff wrong in it. But this is all difference of opinion, I'm sure. You like your games, I like mine, so, we'll just keep being cool. Hopefully hang out at Backstop 2022 or something at this point, and other things beyond that. This is our Gotti. Trying not to ramble too much longer, so signing out. Y'all have a great day.